Hello and good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, depending on where you are. We hope you are well and safe in your homes. Thank you for joining us today. My name is Nisha, and I am a product marketing manager at AppViewX. Our topic for today is Accelerate Digital Transformation with Application Delivery Automation, which is part 2 of the Simplify Enterprise IT Infrastructure series. This webinar will be presented by Glenn Gray, Senior Solutions Architect at AppViewX. For those of you who didn't attend part 1, you needn't worry because we'll be touching briefly upon that as well. Just a little housekeeping before we begin. If you have any questions, please type them into the Zoom control panel at any time. I will bring them up during the Q&A session at the end of the presentation. Without much ado, let's go into the webinar. Over to you, Glenn.
Thank you, Nisha. Thank you, everyone, for joining, and do hope that all of you are safe and well. As Nisha mentioned, the topic for today is going to be accelerating the digital transformation with application delivery automation. As far as the agenda, we're going to focus on how the infrastructure complexity can impact business. ADCs, describe how ADCs are most commonly the force behind applications. Describe some common struggles with ADC management, benefits of application delivery automation, and orchestrating the lifecycle of ADCs. And after that, I'll provide a brief demonstration of the web user interface of the AppViewX platform and focus on the automation and orchestration capabilities. So how do the infrastructure complexities impact the business? The complexity of managing multi-vendor environments, distributed environments, ones that consist basically on-prem, cloud, and hybrid infrastructures, oftentimes are complex in the sense that you're dealing with multiple vendor operating systems, multiple environments. The technologies are separate, and a lot of this can introduce some inefficiencies as it relates to the operations. One of the primary challenges that I had experienced when working in enterprise environments, especially on ADC environments, is what I call the swivel chair effect. Having to gather up all of your interfaces, whether they're command line, web interface, of multiple devices to identify the path and service availability of a particular application, right? It's going to be traversing multiple platforms, and you have to gather all of that information, getting into multiple web interfaces. You don't really have this application-centric visibility of your services. So you're opening up several web interfaces, several command line interfaces, and piecing together the information. And if it's not the right environment, then you close those environments and go to the next environment as you trace the path of the application instance that you're evaluating. So this is time consuming, and the deployment and creation of services, not only troubleshooting, but deploying an application instance across multiple service environments, whether those are data centers or cloud. That is also a time-consuming process of engineering and implementation, ticketing, approvals, escalations, and if the service requirements were not correct, then it can produce a lot of rework. So that ultimately definitely creates frustration when you've submitted requests and there's a 2-week lead time before the application instance is created, only to find out that it doesn't meet the specific application requirements. So those are some of the common complexities and how those can impact business. Three core business processes that affected by the IT infrastructure complexity: the application delivery, the application security, and the overall network security. So describing the ADC service point as a force behind the applications. Load balance services been around for quite some time and are very highly leveraged when it comes to IT services and application services. Their ability to manage traffic, redirect traffic, making it highly available, always on, is one of the key attributes to ADC's performance and load balance functionality. More and more, the ability to secure the application with infrastructure such as web application firewall, ASM, application security module technology, those types of products are being are becoming more and more common within the overall application deployment and application service stack structure, and then reverse proxying as well. So all of those are integral functions or feature sets within the concept of ADC. So with each of those critical components and critical feature sets being introduced at ADC technology, it's an extremely important service environment behind the applications and web services that a business offers. The common struggles with ADC management: a lack of visibility. And when I refer to visibility, I think of it as an application-centric view and visibility of your service environment. So it's not just, oh, I can get into a particular ADC and I have dozens, if not more than 100 load balance platforms in large enterprise environments, which can support thousands and tens of thousands of application instances. So the visibility of this large service environment becomes especially significant to be able to locate the application services as they exist on the infrastructure, and be able to evaluate them quickly and efficiently. CLI-based configuration management is very time consuming. So getting into the command line interface of 3, 4, 6 devices that support the application instance just to visually identify what the state and status is of the resource, it can take you 15, 20, 30, several moments to interface with the infrastructure just to begin doing discovery or begin implementation. And the inefficient management of the virtual IPs and VIPs and address space. A lot of times configuration items are added, but they're never really cleaned up. So a lot of, similar to firewall space, security policies go in, but they never come out. VIPs go in, but they never come out. SSL profiles go in, but they never come out. Tedious or sporadic configuration backups. Not having a methodology for creating consistent backups so that if a change is implemented and it introduces some adverse condition within the service delivery, can you quickly and effectively restore the previous configuration? Or is it, oh, I just have to sort of wing it, recreate what I think was there and deploy all over again. And then finally, lacking a source of truth kind of relates to the backup of configurations, but not just the backup of configurations, but source of truth being the consistency for deploying highly repetitious changes. So when you're deploying application instances, are there consistencies within the template? Are the naming conventions being conformed? So is there a source of truth for it's done consistently and correctly? So we look to try to redefine the ADC management with the use of automation and orchestration across the AppViewX platform. And that brings about benefits to improve the overall service delivery times so that you're able to meet SLAs and reduce them from 2 weeks down to 2 hours or even less. A drastic reduction in the configuration errors. You're creating a highly reproducible implementation sequence, and the variable sets that go into it are going to be applied consistently. So if your configuration set is already going to take into account the load balance mechanism, the profiles, the acquisition of IP addressing to define the VIP within your DDI resources. All of that is very consistent, reliable, and performs the implementation and design without configuration errors resulting. You're creating an improved ability to be agile, to deliver your services consistently and adapt to the demands and needs of your development workflows. The high application availability and better performance. Again, going towards the consistency of how you're deploying and where you're deploying. So it's being deployed consistently within prod across an HA or multi-service environment. Enhanced application security and protection from DDoS attacks. You're taking into consideration, as we saw 2 slides earlier, the application security WAF type ASM services can also be applied within the consistency of your automation workflow sequences. And then efficient load balancing and traffic management. Not only the AppViewX platform is not only a workflow engine where you can design your implementation workflows, but offering the ability to manage and extend self-service capabilities to application owners, application teams for that efficient traffic management and load balancing. And what does that mean? When we get into the demonstration, I'll show you a feature set called Control Center, where you can extend that self-service capability to evaluate, view, discover the application-centric view, and control the traffic management, load balancing, perform diagnostics, look at configuration set, and so forth of each of the applications. That's tremendously valuable because when you don't have that capability, the application support members require the assistance of network operations, network engineering to be able to evaluate the ADC and load balanced resources relative to their application. So really you're tying up 2 technology resources for one purpose, and that's the application management. So again, the AppViewX platform provides low-code network automation and orchestration. Just a brief summary of the company at a high level. Global service provider or global company, and we have 7 locations throughout. So laying the foundation for digital transformation with application delivery automation and AppViewX, as you think about orchestration and orchestrating the complete life cycle of ADCs, a couple of the bullet points to note here: the automation of VIP and wide IP or DNS creation. So basic functions: create, read, update, delete. Complete visibility into multi-vendor environments. So whether you have mixtures of ADCs, A10, F5, NetScaler, Avi, Nginx, really doesn't matter. Any of those well-recognized ADC platform providers are fully supported by the AppViewX platform. So you don't need a separate centralized management utility for each different vendor. A lot of folks or a lot of companies deploy BigIQ, but if they have a BigIQ and they have other ADC technologies, I mentioned Avi, A10, NetScaler, then there's a separate resource that can't be controlled by the the vendor specific centralized management platform. And that's one of the great features and benefits that AppViewX provides, is that vendor agnostic centralized management. Dashboards, customizable widgets, and what dashboards and customizable widgets provide are the visibility and capability to manage the application services across the ADC platforms. So dashboards that are showing live traffic views, application widgets that would allow you to enable and disable virtual services and pool members, showing diagnostics, again on a graphic dashboard view, and whether those diagnostics are error indicators, active connection indicators. It's just really a wide variety of features there that can be used to improve traffic management and extend self-servicing. Single source of truth. So for device configuration backups, we can maintain those and provide down to the object restoration. So that means I could restore an entire configuration set to an ADC platform, or just down to a particular object like a virtual server, a profile, an iRule, any one of the configuration objects specific. Continuous monitoring. So detailed reports, which can be created ad hoc, meaning on demand, or on a scheduled interval to run and issue via a notification mechanism. We can integrate with things like email and not Splunk, but Slack. And context-aware troubleshooting and auto-remediation, meaning the ability to identify the diagnostics and performance indicators in the context of the application, so application-centric, and even provide auto-remediation. You can have rules that would trigger in case traffic increases, decreases beyond specific parameters, and take a function, perform an action in accordance with the rule definition, the parameters that you have specified. So enabling auto remediation. If traffic increases beyond X, then enable additional pool member, or redirect traffic to additional service endpoints. So some other salient features: zero-touch orchestration, the ability to create the workflows and design those workflows around how much information would be available by the requestor, and to the point of a zero-touch orchestration model, such that it's refined down to the point that developers and those end users that are requesting ADC load balance services simply need to provide the minimal amount of information. And that might just be an alias, right? myapp.mycompany.com. And then all of the other items are refined. It's going to go in service environment data center 1 and service environment data center 2. The consistency of the deployment is always such that, yep, it's an HTTPS service, so I'm going to automatically generate an SSL profile, issue a CSR, have the certificate fetched, applied, bound to the application instance. My application instances, if they always have 4 service pool members, or maybe an elastic pool member structure that is going to add additional VMs or container items, those scalable items could grow. So again, zero-touch orchestration to the point that I'm taking only the bare minimum information from a requestor, and I'm applying this consistent delivery of service. We can integrate with multiple clouds, or we're vendor agnostic. The context and config and state aware, we're able to identify the context of the application. We're aware of the configuration across each of the devices. We've collected the configuration of each device, and we're statefully aware of what's the current status of that service in real time, because we're communicating with the devices where the services are configured. We have a design palette that allows you for low-code, drag and drop visual workflow creation. That is then offered as a catalog item, so they're reusable workflows. Catalog item, just as you might see or recognize in your ITSM platforms like ServiceNow, Jira, Remedy. And we provide a very granular role-based access control. We're leveraging your external authentication mechanisms, your external IAM structure, whether that's single sign-on SAML type service, Radius, TACACS, Active Directory, LDAP, any one of those or combinations of those. We can authenticate users through the web user interface and through API, which API gateway that it's also offered on the platform. We can authenticate externally with those IAM services and map every function and every resource that is controlled through AppViewX down to really every individual function and resource specific. So that highly granular role-based access control allows the AppViewX platform to only extend the necessary functions for the necessary resources to your entire technology staff, IT, consumer base, and so forth. Additional features, application-centric visibility, I've mentioned that several times. Network security automation, we can integrate with security platforms, firewalls, WAF, ASM. Real-time monitoring, we're communicating with the devices, all of our dashboards, all of our graph widgets are reporting diagnostics on 5-second intervals, as low as 5-second intervals. So we're providing that real-time network monitoring. Auditing and compliance. We have the ability to specify policy structures, rules, so that the configuration sets, the workflows, the active services are in compliance. We can generate reports for auditing. Pre-post validation. Within the workflow construct, we can pre-validate that the platform and other services on the platform are in a state that are ready to apply new configuration sets. And then after they're applied, we can post-validate that they have been applied correctly and even validate that the service is operable and running. Could be, via curl statement or something like that, so that, much like a health check, but it's beyond a health check because it could be validating that the actual service is going to respond to a emulated call for service functionality. And we can manage certificate life cycles. So key, private key, SSH key, and certificates are also a managed feature set within the AppViewX platform. So this image is meant to represent how robust the AppViewX platform is. And it's pointing out the fact that we can manage and integrate with almost every aspect of IT infrastructure, from certificate authorities to ADC platforms to firewall and WAF security products to DDI services to ITSM platforms, as well as security and key management platforms like HSM and vault mechanisms. So we can integrate with all of those, and regardless of whether they're on-prem or in cloud environments, and we can, with role-based access control, allow for all of these technology skill sets listed on the left: application engineering, NetOps, SecOps, DevOps, all of those different technology skill sets can come together in a centralized platform that is AppViewX and perform the necessary functions regardless of the devices that make up the ecosystem. So now I'm going to jump over to a demo instance and try to showcase some of the items as I was describing within the actual software platform. So I've jumped over to my sandbox environment, and I'm going to log in as an administrator. I want to focus on the request catalog items that relate to automation and orchestration. So the initial dashboard is showing a summary and overview of configurations and changes that have been applied through the AppViewX platform. You're seeing total number of requests, those that have been successful, failed, and so forth. These are the individual requests by bar chart that have been executed, and you can see, a time graph of how many changes have been processed over time. Nice summary, right? So you get a visual of what's been going on in the environment, but really the workflows themselves are the catalog of automation and capabilities. So you can customize these categories. We offer over 135 predefined workflows, and from those they can be customized if it's necessary, but in many cases they work as designed out of the box within a given service environment. If there are additional customizations, and what do I mean by customizations? Well, hey, let's take an example. I have a create wide IP on a big IP function here, and it's going to take the input of this is rather verbose, but it could be streamlined beyond this. But selecting the device you want to apply the new wide IP on, and then the record type and what type of load balance solution that you're wanting to apply to this particular wide IP with its virtual server pool members. If you wanted to have additional customizations like well, this is the submittal request form, but I also want to send a copy of this or email notification to a particular implementation or approval group. Once I hit next and submit, that could be an added additional sequence within the workflow. So that's what I'm referring to when I say it can be customized. But as this initial deployment or default deployment of this workflow, it's going to pause for the authorized user to approve and implement it. But again, if I wanted to initiate some additional sequences within the workflow, like notifications or maybe ServiceNow rhythm ticket creations, maybe Slack notifications, something like that. Again, all customizable and supported as far as editing a particular workflow structure that is provided by default. So just going through, these categories are customizable. So if I wanted to create a new category, I could create a new category and edit my layout. So you can name these however you want. These are catalog group name structures that we've created just to hopefully be meaningful as a representation. So as I look at some of these items, it's routine report generations, certificate automation, network automation. We can integrate with switch and route platforms even, so we can create sort of routines for applying a new OSPF neighbor adjacency, configuring loopback interfaces, applying ACL structures to layer 3 switch devices. Really quite a bit of broad capabilities there. So without going through each of the service catalog items, I just wanted to point out that this is the service catalog offering, and when you select an item, it's an easy to identify format structure. So the form which is presented is easy to understand and is customized to the needs. So if you're wanting to offer with the pool status, you can only specify those features or options that you intend, and not the entire feature set, option set that is available on the product itself. I think that goes a long way with extending this service catalog for self-servicing to the requestors, because when you extend the option for every available attribute that the product offers, it's confusing. Those that don't work routinely within ADC environments aren't going to understand the 5, 6, 10 different load balance algorithm options. So instead, you only present 2, round robin, least connection, right? That's the very most common types. So there's no need to extend all of the others, which are simply going to be confusing to a requestor. So those are some of the considerations to take in creating customized workflows or workflows in general that provide this automation capability and reducing the SLA times. So that's the request catalog item, and I wanted to focus on the studio, where the design concept of creating a workflow comes into play. Each one of these items listed here is also an item listed under the request catalog once they're enabled. Enable, disable just basically enables it to be included in the catalog. When I have it disabled, then I'm taking it out of the listed catalog so that I can edit it, manipulate it. So if we were to look at an example of a workflow, which I'm going to disable this and then go into, this is the create virtual server with on a big IP utilizing an Ansible executor, which we can integrate with Ansible. But the point is, it's a low code, highly intuitive drag and drop visual workflow palette. I'm able to construct how the workflow sequence is going to execute. And you'll see in this one, I collect the variables for the input form. It's going to create, with that variable input set, a playbook, a virtual playbook instance. I've integrated an email notification into this workflow, and it's just going to send an email to the intended recipient, a coworker of mine, and it's specifying here's the YAML content of this that has been created in this workflow based upon the input variables, and then it would execute. So this is a very simple workflow description, but I wanted to point out how easy it is for creating these, right? We have a huge library of predefined functions that can include more complex technologies or decision-making processes, if then else, evaluate, join, switch, so forth. We can integrate with things like Ansible, and we can integrate notifications or even ITSM, where if I want to create a change ticket, so if I wanted to take the input form and then I could apply a create sequence to create the change ticket, and at a later time, prior to executing the implementation, I could validate or get the status of the change ticket item. I could then update the change ticket item once the validation of the implementation is completed, so that I'm closing out that change ticket item. So really, it's almost endless as to how you can design and redesign and update your automation task sequences. So one last item, and then I'll open it up for questions. I was mentioning the ability to self-service and perform traffic management and extend this contextually aware view of applications to application owners and support members. So in the control center, this is a regex query field, and I can locate applications on any expression, IP address, some snippet of the application name. So as I use just the word demo as an example, I'm going to see all of my application instances that contain that string value demo. So as I look and I see, okay, I have an application here with 2 virtual servers. Now I can get that visual orientation or that visual representation of this application instance. This happens just to be a wide IP. We have the wide IP with 2 virtual servers contained. I'm going to go back into that and look at a application instance on an LTM perspective. Let's get, so here on an LTM perspective, I have one application instance, IP address, service port, pool with 2 pool members. I can do self-servicing if my role-based access control permitted me to. So what does that mean? I could self-service, meaning, let's say I don't want traffic to flow to this virtual service any longer. I could disable it. I can view the configuration of this particular application instance. I can view persistence records. I can view a graph of the traffic flows. Now, nothing's flowing to these service instances in this demo environment, so the graph was not going to show any information, but you can also see the number of active sessions, TCP connections per object, even on this view here. This view alone is significant and time saving, merely by the fact that if an application owner wants to gather this information, which is very common, there may be wanting to take these pool members offline, online, so that code can be upgraded, rolling restarts need to be performed, or whatever, patching. And instead of creating the change request, submitting it over to network operations, having the network operations engineer assigned, take it up, start the workflow, work in the change control window, right? You're not having to tie up these two technology resources to perform this one single task. You're enabling your application owners to go in and look specifically at their applications and perform any of these functions that you want to provide to them. So if a change were made and it's had some adverse effect, and you enable in role-based access control that this feature is made available, then they could go in and restore, say, the virtual server configuration set, the pool member configuration set, whatever the case may be, back onto the service instance. So very, very useful when it comes to self-servicing and automation, and extending those capabilities out to the consumer base. Last item, I was mentioning dashboarding, and this is the server certificate dashboard. It's a default, and we have client, code signing, and firewall, and ADC. All of those are default dashboard structures. But within the dashboard structure, it collects some information that that is very meaningful in most general situations. If there is a dashboard structure that is not in the default, it can be easily added or created. So I can create additional widgets and dashboard views, realign them so that I'm getting the meaningful information that is relevant to my environment. So with that, I would like to open it up for any questions and answers. Feel free to post any questions into the Q&A or onto the chat session of the Zoom meeting. I have one question here. It's how does the Big IQ compete to the AppViewX platform? Most significantly, Big IQ is only going to support the F5 vendor product line. But if you only have F5s, not such a big concern. But if you have a multi-vendor environment, it is a concern. But beyond that, let's just say that, okay, you only have F5s in your environment. The visibility through Control Center, right? Just this discovery mechanism is leaps and bounds above what visibility in an application-centric view that you would be able to gain from Big IQ. Another, the ability to restore on an object-by-object basis in an extremely easy and efficient manner, where you're looking at that particular application instance. You know, as we looked at on this example here, where I could restore the individual items, where I can get graphic views of the traffic flows, where I can immediately access the configuration, event logs, traffic alerts, and so forth. So those are some of the differentiators between Big IQ and the AppViewX platform. The ability to search the entire infrastructure within a single regex-based query utility. I would point those out as top 5. Any other questions? Well, it looks like we have no other questions. Thank you everyone for joining. Please stay safe, stay healthy, and we'll look forward to meeting you again out there in the community.